So let's talk about vocabulary knowledge in the brain. I really want you to get a sense of how this knowledge works so that you can start thinking from a language acquisition point of view, how you want to teach vocabulary to your students. Okay, so as I stated before, the first thing we have to remember about vocabulary and the words that we know is that it is not an inventory of individual words. We don't have these super long lists in our minds of words that we know. So it's not like a dictionary. Vocabulary knowledge is a network, okay? And so that's why I'm emphasizing this idea of building schema, because when we build conceptual knowledge in our students, vocabulary knowledge or acquisition becomes more natural. It becomes more automatic. You're not sitting there thinking about which word you have to memorize. You're placing a word in a context. You're being exposed to a word in a context that's going to help you remember that word, and it's going to help you make connections to your other language if you're a bilingual. Okay, so the other thing that I need you to know is that bilingual languages are interconnected. Okay, so for a while in linguistics, there was a debate, when you know more than one language, um, are they separate, in the mind, or are they interconnected? And research has very much shown, robustly shown, that bilingual languages are interconnected. So if your student is learning the word fruit, okay? And you start talking about fruit and everything about fruit, that student is going to make a connection to the word and the concept of fruit in their home language, okay? So let me give you an example of how vocabulary knowledge is mapped in our minds, okay? So let's just take the word fruit. The first thing that you'll probably guess correctly is that we have a representation of what this word means, okay? So we know that fruit is a type of food that grows on a tree or a plant or in the earth, right? So the first thing that might come to your mind is the definition of a fruit. However, if we think about fruit some more, we might start to think of specific fruits. We might start to think of apple or bananas and grapes. And notice here that banana and banana are cognates in English and Spanish. Okay, so do you see here how I'm starting to get you to think about connections, okay? And then you might start thinking about, well, we buy fruit in a supermarket. We can also get it at a farmer's market or maybe at a fruit stand on the street. Maybe you start thinking about where the fruit grows, the specific words where certain fruits grow. So apples grow in an orchard, bananas grow on plantations, and grapes grow in a vineyard. Okay, so do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see how when you start building students' schema around a concept, okay, then all of a sudden you don't have to worry about lists of vocabulary that you have to teach them. They're going to be exposed to this network, this lexical network, this conceptual network. You may also think of adjectives that describe how fruit tastes. Words like sweet and healthy and ripe and crunchy and juicy. Okay, so those are also connections that you can make lexically to the word fruit. You're also going to make some morphological connections to the word fruit. Okay, so if you hear the word fruit, you may also think of fruity and fruitless and fruits and fructose. Okay, and a Spanish speaker might make the connection to the cognate fruta or fruto. And so those morphological connections, that recognition of the root word fruit, is definitely part of your lexical representation. You also have a phonological representation of how the word sounds. So in your minds, you know it sounds like fruit. Okay, I've used the IPA there for you. You have, if you are literate, you also have a representation. Your representation also includes the word spelling, F-R-U-I-T. You may also, the word fruit may also evoke for you other words that it might rhyme with, like suit, right? Or words that start the same, like flute or fresh. Okay, so have you ever had moments where you have said one word instead of the other? So you wanted to say fruit, but instead you said flute, because when those moments happen, it's because in your mind, the representation of that word includes words that sound like that word, okay? And so you also have some syntactic knowledge in your representations. So you know that fruit is a non-count noun, okay? But it can also be a count noun if you're talking about specific fruits, right? Or a piece of fruit. We know that it's an inanimate object, okay? And that's going to impact how we deal with this word syntactically and semantically. And then finally, we have, remember how I was talking about collocations and expressions, word combinations, okay? We never know a word in isolation. A word is always in context. It can be in a schematic context, right? When we're thinking about a concept, it can be in a lexical context in terms of how we use this word with other words. So we say a piece of fruit in English. We have an expression, the fruits of one's labor. We also say things like to bear fruit, right? Which, by the way, has a direct translation in Spanish, dar fruto. And so, as you can see here, this is a network, right? This is a network based on one concept, okay? The concept of fruit. So based on one word and the concept that that word represents, you can map out all of these different areas with your students depending on what you want to focus on.